Today we're going to be reviewing the quadratic formula. So we're going to just go over a couple of things about the quadratic formula. Make sure you're ready to do that since it's been a while since you've seen it. So first of all, let's go ahead and let's write what the quadratic formula is. So the quadratic formula is x is equal to opposite of b over 2 times a. So that's the formula. I want you guys to write it down because it is really important that you remember that quadratic formula. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 1. So what we want to do for number 1 is I'm going to do my a is equal to 1, my b is equal to 9, and my c is equal to 20. So I'm going to go ahead and calculate this out. So I get opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. And all of that is going to be over 2 times a. So what I do is in my calculator, I figure out what 9 squared minus 4 times 1 times 20 is. And when I do that, I end up getting the square root of 1. So I have not taken the square root yet. And then we'll divide that by 2. So then I have negative 9 plus the square root of 1. So I'm going to take that, enter it into my calculator, and divide it by 2. So that's basically the same as negative 1 plus 1, which is going to give me a negative 4. So then we're going to do negative 9 minus the square root of 1. So negative 9 minus the square root of 1. Hit enter on your calculator and then divide it by 2. And when you do that, you're going to get a negative 5. So my solutions for that one are negative 4 and negative 5. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 2. So for number 2, my a is going to be 2. Now I notice that there is no x term, so that means that my b is going to be 0. My c is then negative 32. So then I'm going to do opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2 times a. Well, the 0 I'm just going to leave out, so I'm just going to write the plus or minus. And then I'm doing 0 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 32. Now when I do that, I get a positive 256 and dividing that by 4. So first I'm going to take a positive square root of 256. So I'm going to see what that is in my calculator and then divide it by 4. And when I do that, I get 4. So that's one of the answers. The second answer, we're going to take a negative 256, hit enter, divide that by 4, and then I end up getting a negative 4. So my answers then are positive 4 and negative 4. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at number 3. And it's actually not on this smartboard, so I'm just going to write it out as we go here. So for number 3, our a is going to be a negative 2. Our b is a 6, and our c is a 9. So now I'm going to plug that into the quadratic formula. So I get opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2 times a. So then I end up getting a negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times a negative 2 times 9. Oops, I already did that. So let's go ahead and let's calculate what's underneath that radical. So that's what I'm going to put in my calculator is 6 squared minus 4 times a negative 2 times 9. Now when you put that in your calculator, you get the square root of 108. And that's going to be divided by a negative 4. So first I'm going to do negative 6 plus the square root of 108. I'm going to type that in my calculator, then I'm going to take my answer and divide it by a negative 4. Now when I do that, I get 1.10. So I do want you to actually type that in your calculator so you can see the rounding that happens, because you need to make sure you're rounding these correctly. I usually suggest that students use 2 decimal points. So you do negative 6 minus the square root of 108, hit enter, and divide that by a negative 4. And when you do that, you get a negative 4.10. So that's your final answer for number 3. So let's take a look at number 4, which is number 3 on here, but number 4 for you guys. Okay, so my a is going to be 2, my b is going to be 5, and my c is going to be negative 3. So I get opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2 times a. So now I'm going to do my negative 5 plus or minus the square root. So 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 3. Well, when you punch that in your calculator, you're going to get 49. So the square root of 49 divided by 4. So let's go ahead and do this. We have negative 5 plus the square root of 49. So I'm going to type that in my calculator first. Negative 5 plus the square root of 49. Hit enter, and then I'm going to divide it by 4. That's going to give me 0.5. Then I'm going to do negative 5 minus the square root of 49, hit enter in the calculator, then divide it by 4. And when I do that, I get negative 3. Okay. Last but not least, let's take a look at number 5. So we're going to go ahead and calculate out our A, our B, and our C. So our A is 2, that's always with the squared term. Our B is negative 3. Well, now I run into an issue. I see that negative 7 is on the wrong side of the equal sign. So remember that in order to use the quadratic formula, it has to be set equal to 0. So since there's a minus 7 on that side, I'm going to go ahead and add 7 to both sides. So I get 2x squared minus x plus 7 is equal to 0. So now I know that my C is actually going to be a positive 7. So now I can plug that into the quadratic formula. Opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2 times a. So then I get 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 47, and we're dividing that by 4. Now recall that you cannot take the square root of a negative. So since you can't take a square root of a negative, your answer is going to be no solution for number 5. So that concludes your note video for today. Thank you for listening.